welcome Teza to the first ever proper episode of the Jared Hughes podcast, that's how I'm calling it. So just, how are you? How have you been recently?
Going good, mate, for an old guy. Yeah, I'm loving it. Life's really good at the moment, so no complaints at all.
How did you become the guy that does the Newcastle Surf Report every day and not some other Novocastrian or some other bloke in this city? How did it end up being you?
Yeah.
So I want to start with going back to, what's your origin story? Where were you born? Where were you raised?
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Okay, so I'm from Maroubra. I've still got the 2035, the original Bra Boy stamp, from way back in the day. So Maroubra is in the southern suburbs of Sydney, for people that don't know, and it's a pretty hardcore beach to grow up at. My parents had a motel at the north end of the beach, and that they used to manage, and I used to live on a surfboard there, and that's where I grew up, in the corner. And it was a real tribe of people to grow up with, really hardcore. There's a lot of housing commission right on the beach. It was the biggest housing commission estate in the country, right on the beach at Maroubra. So it was something they trialled way back in the 60s at Lexington. So it was literally half a kilometre back from the beach. So so everyone from Maroubra was pretty tough, it was a tough environment to grow up in. I was pretty lucky. My parents were beautiful people who were very loving and had a really nice family, and my dad did pretty well for himself. So, we had a farm down south of Kangaroo Valley. We used to go down there. We had 10 horses down there. Winter time we'd go down and go to the rodeo and ride the horses and, round up cattle and stuff. And summertime we had a house in Port Stephens on the beach. It was my nan's old 5-row house at Soldiers Point. So we'd have speedboats that we'd leave up there, and we had a nice house in Maroubra and a couple of businesses going. So life was pretty good for Teza growing up in Maroubra. When I was about 16 or 17, my dad said to me, one day just came home and said, "We're out of here. We're going to live in Port Stephens." I went, "Oh, well, good luck. I'm not going." And he said, "Well, good on you. If you can find somewhere to stay down here, mate." And being 16 or 17 with no money, of course I went with them. And when I got to Port Stephens, I realised, oh my goodness, this is just paradise. I like to call Port Stephens now the Whitsundays of Newcastle. It's just beautiful. So, that was the beginnings of the whole thing. And when I did eventually come here, I just started really getting into surfing, followed the World Surfing Tour around for a while, did okay, but kind of got into surf coaching and then managing surf shops. I was the manager of Pacific Dream Surf Shop. And one day, someone came into the surf shop and said, "Hey, we're going to bring FM radio to Newcastle," because previously to that, it was just the AM band, which was non-stereo radio, right? The basic stuff. So all of a sudden, we're going to have this rock and roll stereo radio station in town. And so Roy Lee, my boss, said to me, "Get up there and read the." First off, what happened? They offered a surf shop a free ad. And we said, "Oh, awesome." And Roy said, my boss, "Give him some information to work with." So I wrote out a brief ad about the shop and everything. When we heard the ad, it was like Pacific Dreams. And it was some really fuddy-duddy dude with his finger in his ear. Anyway, the ad sounded bad and it wasn't a good reflection of how cool we were at the store. So when the guy came back a couple of weeks later, he said, "Did you hear your ad on the radio?" Because when they start a new radio station, they don't have clients, right? So they're giving everyone in town free ads. That's how they start. So we said, "Yeah, we heard the ad and it sucked." And he goes, "What's the matter with it?" And we said, "Well, the guy was like, Pacific Dreams." And he said, "Well, what about that guy?" And pointed at me behind the counter and said, "What about that guy? He sounds like he's got a nose full of salt water." I still remember the quote, and I'm like, "Settle down, dude." He goes, "You do. You've got a unique voice." And Roy said, "Get up and read the ad." I said, "I'm not going up to read any ad." I hadn't even done public speaking or anything at that point. I was not a commentator. And I was just working in a surf shop. I was a surf guy. And he said, "Get up and read the ad." And it was just up the road. So I walked up with Bert, the sales guy, and jumped into the booth to record the ad. And at that moment, Mike Webb, who was the general manager of the radio station, came down to the sound booth. And I saw him when I was reading the ad, standing there outside with his hands folded with a look on his face. And when I came out, he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm Teza, the surf guy and that. I manage Pacific Dreams." And he goes, "No, you've got a very unique voice. And I think it would be good for radio." I went, "Really?" "Oh, okay." And he goes, how about you come down and see me in the manager's office when you wrap up here? So I went down there and he said, sit down. He goes, mate, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. I think he paid me twice what I was getting at the surf shop, plus a petrol card and a free car. Woo. And I just went, oh my God, yes, I'll take the job. So I walked back down to Roy, my boss at the surf shop, and said, hey, Roy. He goes, how'd the ad go? I said, pretty good, but you'll never guess what happened. He wasn't real happy about it. Of course, because, I was pretty good for the shop. We had one store when I went with him, and we had 6 stores at that point, all in shopping centres on, bottom level of the centre court. So it was the glory days of radio, 1989, September. I still remember it.
What age were you then?
I was in my 20s, like mid-20s, like 26 or 27. And so Roy just basically said, I'll give you like a 3 weeks notice. And he said, Jan, he called out to his wife and said, make up 3 weeks pay for Teza, you can go straight away. And he was really pissed at me, and I was bummed because I love these people. They're really nice to me. But this was an opportunity I couldn't say no to. So I walked back up to the radio station with me 3 weeks pay and said, can I talk to Mike? And they said, yeah. And so Mike said, what's going on? I said, I went back and told him he offered me the job and he sacked me. He goes, start tomorrow on $1,000 a week. This is 1989. I went, wow, okay. And so that was the beginning of the whole thing. That's how it all started.
So that's interesting how you got started. So then what was your role? Was that going straight into doing the Newcastle Surf Report?
Yeah, they hired me as what they referred to as a lifestyle reporter, which is still what they call me. And at that point, I was working with the breakfast crew. So I would go in the morning, I'd go in with the breakfast crew, then I'd take the New FM car, because it was New FM back then, take the car out, do a couple of giveaways, a couple of surf reports, then come back in for the last half an hour of the show. So I did that for, I think, 22 years. So, and I lasted a whole bunch of different breakfast crews, working with Steve Graham and Garth Russell and John Paul Young, and oh my goodness, the list just goes on for the amount of people that they came through the station. And at the end, Mike himself even got let go by the board of directors, even though it was his station. This happens in big business. And then I stayed on for another year or two, and I was like the last man standing from the original crew 22 years earlier with a new owner. So at that point, I got an offer from Triple M to go up, that was 12 years ago, to go up the road to work for Triple M. And that was like the call that everybody at New FM was waiting for. It's a big upgrade because that's Oz Stereo and it's Australia's biggest radio network. So that was a dream come true. And since then I've been with Triple M. They've been awesome to me. And it's a lifestyle. This year in September this year is 35 years that I've been doing this job 7 days a week.
Damn.
Yeah, and quite often on 2 stations. When I was with New FM, they do it on 2 HD as well. And then when I changed over to NX and KOFM, and then eventually that became Hit 106.9 and Triple M. So I guess I've been on 2 radio stations 7 days a week in Newcastle for 35 years every day. So that has created a real branding opportunity for the brand of Teza Mckenna. And now I've got like a whole bunch of ambassadorships with different companies that I represent. And so I guess a whole lifetime of nothing has become something. Yeah, wouldn't say nothing, but it's been a really cool way to avoid a real job.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun.
That's cool. So then how did you end up on, when was it that you worked on the World Surf League?
Okay, so firstly, my origins of surf commentary, New FM sponsored Surfest. So I used to go down to Surfest. I was a competitor in Surfest for the first 3 or 4 years. And then I got the job with the radio station, and I went down the first 2 years, I think, and worked with the radio station. We built a tower down there, big scaffolding tower, and we used to do a live broadcast, and I'd do all the live surf reports from there and stuff. And then one day, Warren Smith, one of the commentators, didn't turn up for an event that he was having down at South Newcastle, and he came up and he said, would you be interested in doing some commentary? And I went, oh yeah, I can have a go. And I went down there, and then at the end of the day, everyone came back and went, oh my God, this guy's a natural born commentator. And Warren said, well, let's bring on the whole contest. So I did the rest of the contest, and yeah, the rest is history. So this year was the first year in 28 years that I didn't do the commentary at Surfest because I had a commitment with, and people will find out in the future, I had a commitment with a reality TV series that I had to go and do some filming. So it was pretty cool, and it was worth missing Surfest for, put it that way, yeah.
Suffering from success.
Yeah, oh yeah, I've been my own victim of success.
Nah, that's good.
Yeah, so then I guess from there, that Surfest was a world tour event, and always was in some aspects. So from there, the World Surf League were working with me year after year, and they basically just said, like, we want you to come and work with us. So they picked me up, and I started doing events for WSL South America. So I was living in Chile for a couple of months a year, then I'd go and live in Portugal, and then I'd go to the Canary Islands, and wherever I was, there'd be a surf comp on. I'd be doing some commentary. I speak a bit of basic Spanish. So yeah, I did that for I think like 8 or 9 years, you know, where I just went overseas, and I would leave in May and I'd come back in October and just completely miss the Australian winter, which was really cool. But I'd be in Portugal at like 2 a.m. in the morning doing a surf report for, you know, the afternoon in Newey, and people like were sending me messages going, "You sound like you had a big night last night, mate." And I was thinking, if only they knew, you know, the illusion of radio.
So when people send you the clips of the Newcastle beaches,
I had a guy that I employed, so he would go and look at the surf in the morning, and back then I didn't film the surf report, it was just a radio report. So later on, when I got to the stage where I was filming the surf report, because I think we're up to 10 years of doing that now with the video surf reports, on Teza's Newcastle surf report, on both Instagram and Facebook. And we just passed the 2 million views mark. So yeah, we've got some pretty good traction now, and lots of sponsors lining up to be a part of that. It's really good value for, you know, it's all local or organically grown, no vanity numbers or anything in there. So it's been a really cool product. I have a manager of mine, Troy Martin, who's a real genius when it comes to social media, and he knows how to work the numbers, and he does all of he sells the surf reports to the companies and that. It's hard for me to, as you can imagine, I'm kind of like become a product in myself. So it's hard for me to sell Teza Mckenna, so I just be me and he sells it. Works out perfect. Cut a little bit off on the side for him, yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So what was one of those, you know, going to Chile, Portugal, all that, what was like one of the best, out of all the 8 years that you did that, what would be like the best experience? And like, what was one of the key memories from that was just like, that was just insane sort of thing? Do you have any stories from that?
Yeah, probably. I mean, Hawaii was unreal because we ran the competition. As part of all of this journey, I ended up getting the job because I was doing commentary all the time, and I was working with the bodyboard guys, and I still work with the bodyboarding guys. I got offered the job to run the Australian bodyboard tour, like, because I'm a bit of an entrepreneurial event management guy. So I said, yeah, I'll have a go at it. And luckily, I snagged Rebel Sport, who gave me about $350,000 over 5 years, so like 60 grand a year or 70 grand a year. And with that money, I was able to put on some really cool events, like $10,000 bodyboard events, and they don't even have them anymore. Right. This is like the glory days of bodyboarding. So when I started kicking it here in Australia on the bodyboard tour, the world tour guys, Mike Stewart and the guys, all the best bodyboarders in the world who ran the IBA at the time, the International Bodyboard Association, they rang me up and said, hey Teza, we hear you're doing good things in Australia and we want to offer you the job as the tool manager or the general manager of the IBA. And I'm like, wow, okay, what's it consist of? And they said, like, fuck all money and shitloads of work. And I said, I'll have a go, because I'm always one for a challenge. And really proud to say that, you know, after about 5 or 6 years of real hard work, we got the tour, we got a $3 million sponsor. We were probably had a better product than the guys at the time. It was the ASP before it was the WSL. And they were going down, and then the WSL came in and saved them. But at the time, we had better numbers and better sort of media, like the post-production stuff. Even the live webcast with Manny Vargas and all these guys was just incredible. So yeah, I was really lucky. But anyway, we ran the competition in Pipeline, the bodyboarding contest, and going to Hawaii and just spending 4 weeks in Hawaii on the North Shore and setting up a big event like a world tour event at a place like Pipeline, you know. I remember because there's some heavy people in Hawaii, right? And I'm a white guy, or as they like to say, Harley boy. So I remember this big Hawaiian guy came in there. These are the guys that do the water patrol, and they clear the line up with the jet skis. They're all jiu-jitsu, big wave surfers, like hardest nuts you've ever seen in your life, but lovely guys. Anyway, they the first year that I took over from the previous guy who was running it, they said, Terry, there's a guy that wants to see you outside. And I went outside, and it was this guy called Terry Honohui, who's the head of the Dahui lifeguards. Like, this guy is a big player in Hawaii, right? And he goes, oh, Harley boy, what's going on? And I said, oh yeah, Teza, mate, nice to meet you. I heard that it's 7,000 for the water patrol, like for the contest. And he goes, oh no, bruh, it's like 10,000. I went, 10,000? And we had just enough money to pay the 7,000. I'm like, wow, that's $3,000 more than I need to get. I've got to find an extra. And I thought, I'm just going to give my pay from the contest. I'll come here and work for free if I have to make this happen. I went, yeah, cool, man. He goes, yeah, in notes, in cash, in a brown paper bag tomorrow morning, at first day. And I went, okay, no problem. So I went to the bank, drew out like 10,000 bucks out of the bank, and I was on the way home, and my phone rang, and I was like, back in the day before people used to scam you, right? So I just answered it. It was a random call. And this guy's like, yeah, hello, this is Sergeant Stadenko from the FBI. And I'm like, huh, hello? Who's that? And he goes, Sergeant Stadenko, FBI. I'm like, this sounds really like an FBI guy. He goes, mate, we're actually the FBI. He said, did you just withdraw $10,000 out of a ATM in Haleiwa? And I said, I did. And he goes, what's the money for? And I went, oh, I'm running the pipeline contest here. And he goes, what's the company? What's the website? He said, hang on the phone. He checked everything, and then he came back and said, okay, all legitimate. I said, you know, when I draw 10 grand out of the bank, he goes, we know everything. I'm like, wow, this is kind of before 9/11, just before it. So I'm like, okay, it was 2010, right? So it was the year before. So they were on to everything, all these big money laundering sort of things. So anyway, I went there with the 10 grand the next morning. I put in a McDonald's bag, and just like he asked for. And I walked down to him, and he was sitting there with all these posse, like on the jet skis, like a pipeline, you know. I'm like, Terry, and he's like, yeah, how you going, Teza? What's going on? I said, I've got that for you. And he goes, okay. And he counted it out, and he goes, oh, $10,000. I said, yeah. And he peeled off the 3 grand and gave it back to me and goes, you passed the test. Which is really cool. I'm like, what? This is a test? He said, yeah, you passed the test. You're a good guy. Tez is a good guy. And I'm like, okay, man, thank you. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, but those trips to Hawaii, we ended up going back 6 years in a row. And some of those trips were some of the best I ever did. Going to Chile for the first couple of times for Antofagasta was incredible. Nazaré, of course, in Portugal, where the big waves are, became friends with Walter Chacharo, who's the mayor of Nazaré. And even Canary Islands, we had this event at El Confital, beautiful right-hand wave, and then we eventually went on to a place called El Fronton, which is like the beast of waves that you've ever seen in your life, so crazy. So, you know, I was able to travel the world for maybe 12 years with the IBA and then the APB eventually, and traveled to so many countries, and it was a lot of work. It was right when I was raising my kids. So, you know, all those years of all that travel was just some of the best memories. And, yeah, you said before, did you work for it, or were you in the right place at the right time? Well, I just believe that like almost life is like predestined, to tell you the truth. And I have like an analogy where I'm sort of like on the river of life, and I don't orchestrate anything. I just let it unfold naturally, man, because if you start trying to push stuff, like maybe you'll be swimming against the current. So I just lie on my little blow-up mattress, the lie-low of life, right? And put my hands behind my head, and I just float down the river. And sometimes I'll go into a little billabong, and I'll be needed there for a while, and then the current will pick me up and take me back into the mainstream, and the next minute I'm off to another adventure. So that's how I've lived my life, really, with no real plan. I'm not a materialistic person. I've made some okay money over the years, but in general, you know, I'm living here in a community share place, which is Newcastle's first com share. We're actually in the community room here at the moment. And I live in a 1-bedroom studio apartment by myself, so I wouldn't by any means call myself rich, but I do have a lot of ambassadorships that give me like free cars and free motorbikes, and access to a lot of things that other people would just die for. Money can't buy experiences, like meeting famous people with the radio station, picking them up, taking them out for the day and stuff. So, life to me is so fragile. I've seen a lot of friends of mine just come and go, and life can be just like in a blink of an eye. You can make all these plans, and you're driving down the street, and some guy comes through a red light, and then goes everything, right? So I've always tried to live in the moment, and I mean, we're in this moment now, so this is where I am, and some people can tend to live a bit like in yesterday, and regret some of the decisions and keep thinking about the past. And then some people get anxious about the future, and so they're never actually in the moment of now. But for me, there's only now, there only ever was now, and there only ever will be the moment of now, because that's what life is, right? The moment that you're living right here, in this moment, in this conversation we're having right now.
Yeah. That's good stuff. But so you live in the now. What brings you back to, you've travelled everywhere. What brings you back to Newcastle?
Yeah, Newcastle, I mean, I grew up in Maroubra. I loved Maroubra for a long time, but Sydney got out of control. There's way too many people there now. I drive down the highway to Sydney and I get to the Pymble turn off, and I start to get anxiety because it's just out of control. There's different languages written on the shop fronts and stuff, which is cool. I mean, we're a multicultural society. Newcastle's still, for me, one of the last bastions of Aussieism. Not that I don't embrace multiculturalism or I'm not racist in any aspect. I love all different nationalities. But there are a lot of Anglo-Saxon, Australian people here in Newcastle. It's a good old-fashioned, blue-collar, hard-working Aussie town, right? So I like that. And I also love the fact that, blue-collar town. I really love the fact that it's a city that is right on the beach, and it's the city of beaches. We can go, I don't know, half an hour to the south, and we've got Fraser Park and National Park. We go 40 minutes to the north, we've got Port Stephens, the blue water wonderland. You go 30 to 40 minutes west, and you've got the wine territory with all the big concerts and everything. We are literally surrounded by lifestyle here. I say quite often that, planet Earth, I'm pretty sure, is the best planet on in the galaxy, from what I can work out. And then on planet Earth, Australia is the best country. If you go to the top of Australia, there's things in the water that will sting you and kill you. And it's too hot, and it's you go Troppo, you go further south to Tassie or even Melbourne and stuff, Victoria, it's cold and it's windy. And then you go to WA and it's kind of rocky and windy. And then you come onto the east coast and we've got the white sandy beaches, right? Now we don't live too far south, too far north. We're smack bang in the middle of that. So when you break that down, we are the luckiest people in the galaxy. Yeah.
Good way to put it.
Exactly. I love Newcastle, and for me, I could live anywhere in the world. I travelled around, and there were places that I thought I could have lived in, in Chile, and which has gone to the dogs now. I mean, the banditos have taken over a lot of that stuff, and after COVID, things really went south, and a lot of my friends lost a lot of stuff. Venezuela collapsed. The cartel came into Peru, the Peruvian, and took over their drug trade. Peruvian cartel came into the top of Chile and started killing people. All the places that I went to on that bodyboard tour now are just the Wild West, where there's gun battles with drug lords in the middle of the street. Same in Mexico. I travelled to Mexico a few times, and now it's Acapulco and all these places that were tourist meccas of the '80s. Are ghost towns now that are just run by banditos basically, or bad people. So we're pretty lucky here in Australia. We've got a great civil society, and I think it doesn't get any better than Newcastle.
Yeah, that's cool. You mentioned previously you live in the now. You don't worry about the past. You don't worry too much about the future. But is there anything that you wish you could change in the past? Anything that you regret at all?
No, not really. I wish that I could have had hair.
That's a good one. There you go.
No, I don't. I have no regrets. It's funny because I've got a lot of friends who always have a lot of regrets, and they're always going, "Oh, wish I bought a house at Merriweather when they were cheaper," or whatever. It'd be worth $3 million by now. I'm why are you going to make yourself feel sad by thinking like that? So I don't really look back. I have it's an old Maroubra expression. They used to say, don't look back, right? And it referred to when you were paddling for the wave, there was a guy inside you who was probably a non-local guy. Don't look at him, just take the wave. And he will see that you haven't seen him, and then he'll probably pull back as well. It's a good analogy for life. I don't look back, I only look forward, because you can't change the past, but you can change the future. And so I also have another analogy, because I'm an old horse riding guy. And when you see the race horses and they have the blinkers on the side of the eyes, you know why they have them? So they can't see the shit that's happening in their peripheral. So all that they can do is just focus on the finish line and gallop to the finish line to the best of their ability. And that's how I look at life. I just, I'm a big fan of Billy Idol, playing a Billy Idol tribute band. And one of Billy Idolism's, one of his classic cliches used to be, you can't really give a fuck about what anybody thinks or says about you, or you'll never advance yourself, right? And so I live like that, and I get up and do the show, and I've got a Billy Idol wig on and that, and I'm a 60-year-old man dressed up like a rock star and that, and people are some people when they first get there what's the go with this guy, And then by the time that we get into the second song, they realize oh my God, this guy has no ambitions, no inhibitions, and he doesn't give a shit. And when you're in that position, it's hard to write someone off or to hurt someone when they just don't care anyway. So it's been a good way for me to live my life, is just to do. I'm galloping towards the finish line. I've got the blinkers on of life. I'm not looking too much to the left and right. I tend to just have my own biosphere of in Teza Mckenna world. What's happening for me and around me and my friends and the people I love and my family and all that sort of stuff. And I always just look forward all the time. I've been a supreme optimist. When I was a young guy, my dad bought me a series of books called Psycho-Cybernetics, and it was by a guy called Maxwell Maltz, and this is late 70s, by the way. And I read through all these books in that, and what it really made clear to me was that you are what you think you are, and you are what you say you are. And I know there's all that bullshit about manifestation and that around now, but I truly believe that there is an essence of truth to all of that stuff. And I said to my kids when they were growing up, I just kept it simple, but I said, talk about bad things and have a bad life, or talk about good things and have a good life, right? So I believe that you can, if you're hell-bent on something, when I got back into music at 59, and I thought, I'm going to have another crack at music, because I was in a band when I was younger. Every morning that I woke up, I just thought, right, I'm going to Muso's Corner and I'm going to get some new strings, or what about that song I was thinking of last night? And it'd be the first thing I thought of when I woke up, and it would be the last thing that I thought of when I went to bed. And if you get yourself into that frame of mind, then anything is possible, right? Because you start putting yourself in the top 2% of people in the world, because you just have become obsessed with something and you want to be the best at it, or you want to get good at it, or for whatever reason. So I just try and, like I said, just to focus on what I'm doing and try and enjoy every little bit of it, Yeah.
That's cool. Good stuff. So what advice would you give to someone in your 20s? I know you're a mentor and you're a surf coach now in Newcastle.
Yeah.
And you've coached quite a few kids over the years. What advice do you give, outside of surfing advice, what advice would you give to those, teenagers, 20-year-olds, just any 20-year-olds in general? What advice would you give, life advice would you give them?
Think about what you're passionate about, what drives you and what makes you happy. What do you love to do, right? I loved to do surfing at the time when I was in my 20s. So I made surfing my job. I was a surf journalist, a surf coach, I was a surf reporter, I worked in surf shops. So I just did all the things that I love to do, because if you do that, then it's you just never go to work for the rest of your life, right? Because I got a lot of friends of mine who said, I'll chase the academic side of things, and I'm going to go to uni, and I'm going to be a chiropractor, whatever they wanted to be, and off they went. They did 6 years at uni, and then they got into it, and within a year or two they realised, this is not for me, I'm not happy. So it's really just about finding out what makes you happy and try and make that your job, and it's you never go to work. That's the best advice I can give.
And how do you find that thing that makes you happy? If you don't know what it is, if someone's just like, I have got no clue what I'm happy about, what makes, what, you know,
Yeah, I
passion,
mean,
how can you
people
find
have-
that passion?
People have like an idea from a young age. They might like be into sport, or they might be gaming people. So they, you know, I've got a lot of friends now whose kids are, you know, really tech savvy because they're on the iPads and that all the time. I'm saying like the guy's creative and like, you know, I go and play some guitar with him and stuff. I go, this guy's like got a left brain. So you're either a left brain person who's a creative person or a right brain person who's going to be adding up numbers and stuff, you know. So I think it's just important, just work out which brain are you, left or right hemisphere, and then just chase that. And normally you can find out from an early age. I say to my mates with the kids on the iPad, get them in the graphic arts and that, man. I mean, people are going to have to be dealing with this stuff for forever, and it's only going to become, screen to become bigger or smaller, who knows, but more prevalent, you know. I saw on a tech site the other day, it was just a sheet of material, and you just put it around your wrist like that, and you got your phone in your pocket, but it becomes your phone. So it's like this thing that you wear that looks like a cool, you can actually turn it into any color, any kind of shape. It can look like a watch, all that sort of stuff. It was like, technology is amazing. So yeah, just find out what your passion is, and think about what makes you happy and what gets you stoked and what you're interested in. Yeah, and try and chase that up, because, you know, money's not everything. That's the other thing is that, you know, are you working to live or are you living to work? You know, you've got to make that decision in life, because a lot of people build a lot of wealth throughout their lifetime. I've got a lot of friends of mine who are just like, you know, worked in the bank. I started in the bank when I left school with ANZ. Only lasted a couple of years, got out of there and started following the World Surfing Tour. And then I went to a school reunion about a couple of years ago, and one of the guys there was a guy that I started at the ANZ at Bondi Road together. We started as batching clerks together, but he stayed in the bank for his whole lifetime, right? So now he's at the top of the food chain with the bank, and he's got like a couple of houses in Sydney, and he's got lots of money, but he was a very big guy, yeah, maybe 150 kilos, like really. Now he has to spend all the money that he made all his life on his health. You know, so it's a real catch-22, you know. Chasing money, I don't think is really money is for me, and always was, the root of all evil. It can bring out the worst in people. I think that what you want to do is chase life. That's good advice.
Sweet, no worries. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No, not really. Just keep an eye out for, I've got a couple of bands out there. You know, the Oz Idle Experience is a Billy Idol tribute band, and then we've got Primal Rockstar, which is pretty cool. Check out Teza Mckenna on Spotify. You'll be able to hear some of the songs that we're working on, original rock songs. And of course, Rocks On are the guys that I've been playing with for the last 3 years, and we are a 3-set pub outfit that play all around Hunter Valley. So come along and rock out with Teza Mckenna sometime. I'd love to see you.
Sweet, no worries. Thank you very much, Tez.
Thanks, Joe. Good job, mate.
No worries. Cheers.